Hello inmendham. I just saw your video there, and it's a very good video. Thank you very much for your response. And why do you make me think so much? Yes, you brought up so many points that I'm going to struggle trying to put my thoughts around them all in 10 minutes, and I might just keep to one or two of them. Okay. First of all, the plausibility of life you were talking about, and you mentioned one particular form of life, and looking at it and thinking, how improbable is it that this might exist right now? And I think what you need to understand is that what you're looking at there is just one possible form of life, and it could have been so different. One way of explaining it is by looking at the lottery, and if you were to tell me that playing the lottery is not a good idea because the chance of me winning it is so slim, you'd be absolutely right. But if you were talking to the lady next to me and tell her the same story, you might be wrong if you found out that her name is Dolores McNamara, because she won the Euro Millions and she walked away with 145 million euro. So you might be looking at what I would call the 1024th Malteser, and I created a video on that topic. So that's one thing. The other thing is about basically what I think you would call the definition of life, and you seem to be very focused on the reproductive aspect of it, whereas I think that the most basic definition of life would comprise of calling it a process that exists on the brink of chaos, and in which, in a local sense, entropy decreases, even though obviously in a greater environment it would still be increasing as per the second law of thermodynamics. And in that sense, I think if we were to look for life in the universe, we should do better than just look for water, for example. I think we should look for these local areas of decreasing entropy, because that would be a sure indication that there's something interesting going on there, and probably life. Now then, with regards to actual reproduction, again, reproduction is not necessarily the domain of life only. In the most primitive form, reproduction could be a chemical feedback loop again, in which a component takes place in a catalytic fashion, but as it's taking place, more of the same component is produced, and because it's catalytic, the component itself doesn't get destroyed, and as more is being produced, it's a form of reproduction of that particular chemical component. And I can imagine, even though I couldn't possibly explain in such a short time, a gradual move from this most primitive form of reproduction up to cellular reproduction, and reproduction of DNA, reproduction of organisms, and so on and so forth. The latter part of your video is, I think, the most important in one way, because I think it touches on something like, what is it all about? What is the meaning of life? Almost in the sense of saying, like, why bother? Because if we're all just here to live, reproduce and die, and then be forgotten about essentially, then what is the point of it all? And I think if you were to look at my series on death, episodes D1, 2, 3 and 4, I think you might get an idea of where my position is in that regard, because on the one hand I have absolutely no qualms or no equivocation about this, right? I am a material being in a physical realm. As far as I can tell, there's absolutely no evidence for anything supernatural, so that doesn't exist, and therefore when I'm going to die, I'm going to have to look into the abyss and accept the more than likely possibility that that's going to be it. But is that so bad? I don't think so, because it is just, in one sense, it is just a matter of limitation, and we are limited in every regard. We can only jump this high, we can only make so much money, we can only do so much of this, or we can only achieve this much, we can only live this long. However, I think what you need to realize is that as you are inextricably linked with your life, with your physical life, and if that is all there is, then you cannot ever be removed from it either. So you are never going to know anything other than being alive, even though you're going to die and cease to exist. So it is actually, and I really liked your video about eternal life, because my video D2, which I sent to respond to yours, is along this similar lines. It is actually quite a relief to think that this life, this short finite life that I'm going to lead, is always going to be close to me. It's always going to be an intimate part of what I am and who I am for as long as I live. And after that, I don't exist anymore. So I can actually not be extracted from it. I cannot be at a really far remove from it where it all becomes irrelevant or anything like that. So to me, my life is always going to be very, very important and meaningful and rich and so on and so forth. And I therefore think that it's not a good idea to pretend that you're somebody looking in from the outside, looking down on your life and then judging it from that perspective, because that is not ever how it's going to be to you living your life. So if you look at the universe as an entity looking down on this minuscule little speck that you are, then of course it's going to be pointless and meaningless and so on and so forth. But why should you care about that? It's your life and it's important to you.